Chapter 1 House, Will and Owl. You are listening at famvetv.info. Sherlock got out of the taxi and, unskilledly, took out a few pounds from his pocket and paid the driver for the car. Standing on the side of the road, he couldn't help being fascinated by the dilapidated house in front of him. It has been almost a week since I came to this world. Sherlock Forrest is a typical Western English name, and he has long been used to it. This is a very cliched time travel story. Charlotte, a fresh graduate living in China in the 21st century, was accidentally hit by an electric car on her way to her first job interview in her life. The owner of the bike fell into the river with him, which caused Charlotte to drown in an ordinary accident that wasn't /t even a car accident that I don't /t know if it /s because everyone named Charlotte has an easy to pass physique. When he woke up again, he found that he had crossed over to a young British man lying on a hospital bed. An environment suddenly changed, and Charlotte, who was very unfamiliar with everything around her, was very confused at first. But he has always controlled his emotions fairly well, and he didn't /t make any drastic actions in the hospital, nor did he say anything wrong. After a detailed examination by a group of blonde doctors, they came to the condition of Charlotte, who had passed over amnesia caused by a blow to the head. This is no doubt that Charlotte, who didn't /t know anything about the situation and didn't /t even inherit her predecessor /s memory, is a good explanation. Even his poor spoken English can explain the past. After that, he had the excuse of amnesia, and he also openly learned from the doctor in the hospital all kinds of information about the body he possessed in this world. Sherlock Forrest, an ordinary 20-year-old unemployed single young man in Surrey, England. At home, I fell from the second floor because of an accident and fainted. Fortunately, the kind neighbor next door discovered it in time and sent him to the hospital. When he woke up again, the original Sherlock became the Sherlock who had passed through. The time is now the United Kingdom in 1992. This country is going through a period of economic decline. The northern superpower has just announced its disintegration. Less than a year later, the whole of Europe appears to be a little depressed. In the coming August, most European countries will be caught in a financial crisis caused by currency devaluation, and the UK will be the most affected. This is the only major event that will happen in the UK this year to Charlotte, who has occasionally attended several major finance courses in her spare time, that he never dared to think that this plot that would only appear in novels would actually happen to him. After 2 days in the hospital, he gradually accepted this fact. Originally, Charlotte was a person who went with the flow. In his previous life, he was an orphan. Except for a bunch of friends he met in school, he had nothing to do with it. It may not be a bad thing for him to travel to England at the end of the 20th century with the vision and knowledge far beyond this era. He might be able to get rid of the original social animal life. Sherlock, who accepts the reality, can be regarded as officially accepting the identity of Sherlock. After staying in the hospital for 2 more days, after being confirmed by the doctor that he had no other problems, he was released directly from the hospital. Sherlock in this world doesn't /t seem to have any relatives either. Otherwise, a week has passed for such a big event as hospitalization and amnesia, and there will not even be anyone who comes to visit him. For Sherlock, who did not inherit the memory of his predecessor, this is naturally the best thing. If he really has relatives like his parents, he really doesn't /t know how to deal with it. But Sherlock didn't /t seem to be completely unattended until he was discharged from the hospital. The doctor did not ask him to ask for these expenses. After telling him that he could be discharged from the hospital, he handed him a note, telling him that the address written on it was his home. Sherlock used the few pounds he had in his pocket to take a taxi to his home in this world, which was written on the address. To be honest, this 2-story building looks a bit shabby from the outside. The walls outside had already begun to crack, and the floor tiles in front of the house were also full of cracks. The weeds in the yard were obviously not taken care of for a long time, and the iron gate in front of the yard was covered with rust marks. At first glance, people who don't /t know will probably subconsciously think that this is a haunted house where some old witch lived. Sherlock, who had come to his senses, shook his head and smiled bitterly. Whether it /s a man /s house or a haunted house, it already very good for him to have a house now, and he can /t be so picky. At the same time, looking at the broken house in front of him, his eyes became firmer. But at /s just starting from scratch, before the time travel, he was an orphan who was able to get into a famous domestic institution of higher learning and won a national scholarship. In this world, with the advantage of foresight, he really doesn't /t believe that his future life will be worse than before. Sherlock, who was determined, clenched his fists slightly, stood in front of the house, and whispered 2 words to himself. Work hard. However, before he walked into his house with firm steps, the sound of the car turning off suddenly sounded behind him. Sherlock looked back in surprise, and found a top luxury car parked behind him. He had lived for more than 20 years and had only seen the logo on TV. The car door opened, and an old man with white hair and clean clothes, obviously the price of all the clothes he had worn in his previous life, multiplied by 10, could not necessarily buy someone a tie, got out of the car. Master, congratulations on your discharge, but unfortunately on the day you were discharged, Master /s condition deteriorated and he is now in the hospital. Just when Sherlock was still in a daze, the old man bowed and handed a document to him. Master said that your memory loss is not a bad thing, and he doesn't /t want to continue to make trouble with you like this. As long as you are willing to promise never to have contact with those people again, then his title and family property are yours. After all, you are his own flesh and blood, and he doesn't /t want to give the cold-blooded relatives the noble titles handed down from his ancestors and the family property he has worked hard for most of his life for cheap. This contract is both an agreement and a will. As long as you are willing to sign it, you can inherit all the properties of the Cavendish family. Looking at Sherlock, who was standing in the same place and was shocked by his words, he still didn't /t respond. The old man sighed deeply. Yu reading www.uukangshu.com shoved the will into his hand. Young master, don't /t be angry with the master. Forget it, you don't /t remember anything now. But your father really wants you to inherit the title of Cavendish family. If you after thinking about it clearly, just call me according to the above number, and I will take you to see the master as soon as possible. After finishing speaking, the old man sat back in the car, and the black car started and drove away slowly. After standing in a daze for more than 10 minutes, Sherlock was startled by the sound of a horn on the road. He looked blankly at the will in his hand, and looked blankly at the dilapidated house in front of him. So, in this world, he is actually a rich second generation who left home in anger. His cheap father is still seriously ill and will die in the near future. As long as he signs this will, the hard work he said before will never fall on him again like the ink he writes out of his pen. Sherlock, whose brain was blanked by the ups and downs of life, stared blankly at the clear sky, except for a black spot in the sky in the distance. A wanton smirk gradually appeared on his face, and he muttered to himself again. Go to TND and work hard. I want to have fun. While he was speaking, the black spot on the horizon was getting closer and closer, and an owl stretched its wings, gliding over Sherlock /s head like a bomber, and at the same time dropping its own bomb. A letter printed with lions, snakes, eagles, badgers, and 4 animals surrounding the H badge hit Sherlock /s smiling face, which had not yet been arrogant. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.